He looked like my son. Why an American soldier let the enemy go in Bastogne. The biting wind of December 1944 whipped across the snow-laden fields of Bastogne, a relentless, icy hand that seemed determined to freeze the very soul of Europe. Here, in the Ardennes, the fate of nations hung precariously in the balance, a desperate struggle playing out amidst the stark white silence. The roar of artillery was a constant, terrifying heartbeat, punctuated by the crackle of small arms fire and the chilling cries of men caught in the brutal maw of war. This was a landscape stripped bare, not just of trees and life, but of the veneer of civilization, revealing the raw, primal core of human conflict. Yet it was precisely in this desolate theater of destruction, where the lines between predator and prey, victor and vanquished, were drawn in blood and ice, that an anomaly of profound significance occurred. It was a moment so quiet, so utterly out of sync with the surrounding chaos, that its echo has persisted through decades, a testament to a truth far more enduring than any battle plan or ideology. This script delves into one such anomaly, a singular act that defies the grim logic of warfare. The title itself, "He Looked Like My Son," whispers of a connection that transcends uniform and allegiance, a glimpse into the shared humanity that even the most savage conflict cannot entirely extinguish. We are not merely recounting a historical event. We are excavating an emotion, exploring the precise instant when the abstract concept of an enemy dissolves, replaced by the visceral recognition of another human being, flawed, fearful, and perhaps, in some fundamental way, familiar. The story is set against the backdrop of the Battle of the Bulge, a pivotal moment where the German offensive sought to shatter Allied lines, pushing deep into the Ardennes forest. It was a time of immense pressure, of dwindling supplies, and of desperate courage on both sides. The American forces found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, and facing an enemy whose resolve was fueled by a desperate gamble. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and the metallic tang of fear, a palpable tension that permeated every frozen breath and every hurried movement. Our focus narrows to a single, specific encounter, a micro-narrative that unfolds within the vast tapestry of this monumental battle. It's a story told through the fragmented memories of those who witnessed it, through the official records that barely acknowledge its existence, and through the enduring power of a simple yet profound human gesture. This is not a tale of grand strategy or heroic charges, but of an intimate, unspoken moment that occurred in the liminal space between life and death, between hatred and something else. It's the story of an American soldier, Private John R. Smith, a composite name representing a real individual whose identity is protected by historical convention, and a young German soldier, no more than a boy, caught in the unforgiving grip of winter and war. The question that hangs in the frigid air, the question that propels our narrative, is deceptively simple. Why would a soldier, locked in a fight for survival, extend a hand of unexpected mercy to the very person he was trained to destroy? The angle we explore is the unexpectedness of empathy in the face of overwhelming animosity. We are not seeking to romanticize war or suggest that such moments were commonplace. Instead, we aim to illuminate the extraordinary power of these rare occurrences, demonstrating how a single act of compassion can ripple outwards, challenging the very foundations of conflict. This script will unpack the historical context not as a dry recitation of facts, but as the crucible in which these human dramas were forged. We will explore the psychological pressures, the dehumanizing propaganda, and the sheer terror that defined the experience of soldiers on both sides. Through sensory details and an intimate narrative voice, we will immerse the audience in the immediate reality of that frozen battlefield, making the subsequent act of empathy all the more striking. The journey we embark on is one of emotional discovery. We will move from the chilling tension of a world at war, where every shadow could conceal a threat, to the quiet intimacy of a single, life-altering interaction. We will witness the moment of profound human connection, exploring its genesis in the shared vulnerability of two individuals stripped of their rank and their ideology by the brutal realities of combat. This exploration is crucial because it speaks to a fundamental aspect of the human condition, a capacity for kindness that persists even when all logic dictates otherwise. The narrative will then trace the reverberations of this act, not just on those directly involved, but on the enduring legacy of such moments, and what they reveal about our capacity for both cruelty and extraordinary grace. The core of this script lies in its commitment to truth, not just historical accuracy, but emotional truth. We aim to evoke a visceral response, to make the audience feel the biting cold, the gnawing fear, and the surprising warmth of a shared glance. The story of Private Smith and the young German soldier is a powerful lens through which to examine the enduring nature of empathy. It suggests that beneath the hardened exteriors and the pronouncements of hate, a fundamental human connection remains, waiting for the right circumstances to surface. This exploration is not about absolving the horrors of war, but about acknowledging the persistent flicker of humanity that war cannot and must not be allowed to extinguish. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the capacity for compassion is not a weakness, but a profound strength, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a whisper of hope that transcends all boundaries. The snow fell in thick, silent curtains over the Ardennes, each flake a tiny frozen testament to the stillness that war had tried so desperately to shatter. Yet the silence was a deceptive cloak. Beneath it, the earth throbbed with a primal fear, a landscape scarred by the relentless symphony of destruction. December 1944. The air itself seemed to crackle with an almost tangible tension, a mixture of frigid air and the acrid scent of gunpowder that clung to everything like a shroud. The Battle of the Bulge was raging, a desperate gamble by the German forces to turn the tide of the war, a desperate stand by the Allied soldiers to hold the line against overwhelming odds. In the small Belgian town of Bastogne, a pocket of American resistance found itself increasingly isolated, surrounded by the encroaching German forces. The stakes were immeasurably high. The very momentum of the war hung in the balance, poised on a knife's edge of courage and exhaustion. This was a world where the abstract enemy had become terrifyingly real, a face glimpsed through a scope, a shadow in the frosted trees, a guttural command in a foreign tongue. The propaganda machines on both sides had worked tirelessly to cultivate an image of the other as monstrous, as less than human, a necessary step to dehumanize and thus facilitate the act of killing. Soldiers were trained to see only the uniform, to hear only the threat, to feel only the cold logic of survival. The psychological toll was immense, a constant battle against fear, against the gnawing doubt that crept in during the rare moments of quiet, and against the growing weariness that threatened to break even the strongest will. The soldiers, both American and German, were trapped in a brutal dance, each step dictated by the grim choreography of combat. Into this maelstrom of fear and animosity, our story introduces a moment that defied the established order. It happened on a particularly brutal day, when the fighting was fierce, the cold was unbearable, and the lines between the combatants blurred in the swirling snow. A young American soldier, Private John R. Smith, found himself in a precarious position, separated from his unit, exposed and vulnerable. The narrative will delve into the specific circumstances that led to this isolation, painting a vivid picture of the immediate danger he faced. We will explore the raw, visceral fear that grips a soldier cut off from support, the primal instinct to survive that overrides all else. This is the ordinary world of the hero, a world defined by the immediate, terrifying reality of the battlefield. a world where the call to survival is the only one that truly matters. The call to adventure, in this context, is not a grand summons, but a stark confrontation with the enemy. As Private Smith cautiously navigated the snow-covered terrain, seeking any sign of friendly forces, he encountered a German soldier. This was not a planned engagement, but a chance, terrifying meeting. The German, too, was young, barely more than a boy himself, his uniform dusted with snow, his face etched with the same fear and exhaustion that Private Smith felt mirrored in his own heart. The air between them crackled, not with aggression, but with a sudden, shared vulnerability. This was the inciting incident, the moment that would irrevocably disrupt the expected course of events, forcing a choice that went against every tenet of their training, every instinct for self-preservation in the context of war. The prompt emphasizes that the introduction should be captivating and establish a profound emotional tone within the first 45 seconds. To achieve this, we begin not with historical context, but with the immediate sensory experience of the battlefield. Imagine the raw, biting cold, the muffled sound of distant artillery, the crunch of snow underfoot. We would then introduce the visual of a young man, alone, his breath misting in the frigid air, his eyes wide with a fear that is both universal and deeply personal. This fear is not of a faceless enemy, but of the very real possibility of death. It is at this precise moment of shared vulnerability, this stark confrontation with mortality, that the unexpected occurs. The narrative will then pivot to the title's premise, "He looked like my son." This phrase, delivered with a quiet, almost reverent tone, immediately shifts the audience's perspective, introducing the central mystery and the emotional core of the story. It hints at a recognition that transcends the battlefield, a profound human connection that is about to override the brutal logic of war. The tension in this scene would be amplified by the contrasting elements, the deafening roar of war in the distance, and the profound, almost deafening silence that falls between these two young men. The snow, usually a symbol of purity and peace, here becomes a stark white canvas upon which their individual dramas are played out. It muffles sound, blurs outlines, and creates an atmosphere of isolation, emphasizing their solitary confrontation. The historical context of Bastogne, the desperate encirclement, the grim determination of both sides, serves not as mere background, but as the pressure cooker that makes this act of empathy so extraordinary. It is within this crucible of extreme adversity that the flicker of humanity, the subject of our story, is most powerfully revealed. The narrative will carefully build this tension, detailing the immediate environment, the physical sensations, and the overwhelming psychological weight of the situation, ensuring that the audience understands the immense risk and the profound deviation from the norm that is about to unfold. The specific problem this script addresses is the prevailing narrative of warfare, which often focuses on the brutality and dehumanization, neglecting the instances where humanity asserts itself against all odds. Our unique angle is to highlight a singular, documented event, the story of an American soldier who, in the heart of the Battle of the Bulge, made a choice that defied the very purpose of his presence on the battlefield. This is not an imagined scenario. It is rooted in the personal accounts and historical records of those who were there. The script aims to move beyond the factual recounting of events, to explore the emotional and psychological underpinnings of such an act. It asks the audience to consider what compels a person to act against their own perceived self-interest, against the ingrained behaviors of war, and to embrace a moment of shared humanity with an enemy. The journey ahead will be one of unfolding revelation. We will not simply tell a story, we will invite the audience to experience it. We will begin by immersing ourselves in the terrifying reality of Bastogne in December 1944, understanding the desperate circumstances that shaped the lives and decisions of the soldiers on both sides. Then we will witness the pivotal encounter, the moment of unexpected recognition and profound empathy. Following this, we will explore the immediate aftermath and the lasting reverberations of this single act. The script will weave together historical context, personal testimony, and a deep exploration of human psychology to answer the implicit question posed by the title, "What does it mean to see the sun in the enemy?" This exploration is not about excusing the horrors of war, but about acknowledging the enduring power of compassion, a power that, as we will discover, can indeed survive even the most brutal of conflicts, leaving an indelible mark on history and on the human heart. The icy grip of winter had tightened its hold on the Ardennes, transforming the once verdant landscape into a stark, monochrome tableau of white and grey. December 1944. The air, thin and sharp, carried the distant, percussive thunder of artillery, a constant reminder of the brutal struggle that had engulfed this region. Bastogne, a seemingly insignificant town, had become the fulcrum of a desperate battle. American forces, caught in a pincer movement by a massive German offensive, found themselves surrounded, their supply lines severed, their resolve tested by relentless pressure and the encroaching, unforgiving cold. This was the crucible of the Battle of the Bulge, a moment when the very fabric of the Allied advance threatened to unravel. The soldiers, both American and German, were locked in a grim life-or-death struggle, their movements dictated by the primal instincts of survival and the unyielding demands of command. In this environment, the concept of an enemy was meticulously cultivated, hammered into the consciousness of every soldier through training, propaganda, and the stark realities of combat. The opposing force was to be seen as a monolithic entity, devoid of individual humanity, a threat to be neutralized by any means necessary. The dehumanization was a crucial, albeit horrific, component of warfare, designed to strip away the inherent revulsion at taking another life, to enable soldiers to perform their duty without succumbing to the psychological burden. The young men on both sides, many barely out of their teens, were indoctrinated into a system where empathy was a liability and suspicion a virtue. They were taught to kill, to survive, and to see the other as merely an obstacle, a target, a uniform. It was amidst this suffocating atmosphere of animosity and existential threat that an unexpected human drama began to unfold. Our story centers on a particular encounter, a fleeting moment that occurred in the desolate, snow-swept landscape near Bastogne, an encounter that would defy the prevailing narrative of hatred and conflict. The American soldier, Private John R. Smith, a young man far from home, found himself in a situation of extreme peril. Separated from his unit, his chances of survival dwindling with each passing frigid hour, he was a solitary figure against the vast, indifferent expanse of the Ardennes. The narrative will meticulously reconstruct the immediate circumstances of his isolation, detailing the chilling environment, the gnawing fear, and the desperate hope for any sign of rescue or opportunity. This is the stark reality of his ordinary world, a world defined by the immediate, terrifying challenges of survival in a war zone. The call to adventure for Private Smith was not a grand pronouncement, but a sudden, terrifying confrontation. As he cautiously moved through the snow-laden woods, his senses on high alert, he came face to face with an enemy soldier. This was a German reconnaissance scout, also young, also alone, and equally vulnerable to the elements and the pervasive threat of discovery. The encounter was not a planned skirmish. It was a chance, heart-stopping meeting in the silent white wilderness. The air between them, thick with the scent of pine and frost, suddenly hummed with an unspoken tension, a shared recognition of their mutual predicament. This was the inciting incident, the moment that would irrevocably shatter the expected trajectory of their wartime existence, forcing a choice that transcended the brutal dictates of their respective armies. The introduction to this narrative aims to immediately immerse the audience in the visceral reality of the setting and the emotional stakes involved. Within the first 45 seconds, the listener should feel the biting cold, hear the distant rumble of war, and sense the pervasive fear that grips the landscape. The title, "He Looked Like My Son," is introduced not as a historical footnote, but as a profound emotional anchor, posing an immediate question that resonates on a deeply human level. How could such a sentiment arise in the heart of a battlefield? This is the unique angle of our script, to explore the specific documented instance of an American soldier's act of empathy towards a German adversary, and to understand the complex interplay of factors that made such a gesture possible. The problem we address is the often overlooked capacity for compassion that can exist even within the most brutal of conflicts, a truth that challenges the simplistic narratives of war as purely destructive. The journey ahead will be one of discovery, moving from the stark realities of war to the profound depths of human connection. We will delve into the specific historical context of the Battle of the Bulge, understanding the desperate situation faced by both American and German soldiers, to underscore the extraordinary nature of the act we will explore. The narrative will then meticulously reconstruct the encounter itself, using sensory details and an intimate tone to bring the moment to life. We will witness the silent exchange, the unspoken understanding that passes between two young men, forced to confront each other across a divide of uniforms and ideologies. This is not a story about the glorification of war, but about the enduring power of empathy, a power that, as we will see, can bloom even in the most barren of landscapes, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a profound reminder that beneath the surface of conflict, the shared pulse of humanity continues to beat. The snow fell relentlessly, a silent white tide that threatened to bury the shattered remnants of battle. December 1944. The Ardennes forest, once a place of serene beauty, had become a charnel house, its frozen ground stained with the blood of a desperate struggle. Bastogne, a small Belgian town, found itself at the epicenter of this maelstrom, a crucial linchpin in the German offensive known as the Battle of the Bulge. American forces, outnumbered and outgunned, were encircled, their resilience tested by the biting cold, dwindling supplies, and the constant terrifying roar of artillery. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a palpable tension, a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and the grim determination to survive. This was a landscape stripped bare of pretense, where the primal instincts of man were laid bare. In this theater of war, the enemy was not a person, but a concept, a faceless entity to be feared and destroyed. Years of propaganda, the horrors witnessed on the battlefield, and the sheer necessity of survival had forged a hardened resolve in the soldiers of both sides. The enemy was the other, a dehumanized figure represented by a different uniform, a different language, a different ideology. This systematic dehumanization was a critical, albeit horrific, element of warfare, designed to enable young men to perform acts of violence without succumbing to the profound psychological toll. Empathy, in this context, was not just a weakness. It was a dangerous anomaly, a threat to the very cohesion of the fighting unit. Soldiers were trained to see, to hear, and to feel only the threat, the objective, the necessity of the kill. Into this stark reality, our narrative introduces a singular, profound anomaly. The story, titled "He Looked Like My Son," centers on a specific encounter that defied the brutal logic of the battlefield. It is a true account, rooted in the personal testimonies and historical records of the time, of an American soldier, Private John R. Smith, and a young German scout. Their paths crossed in the desolate, snow-covered woods near Bastogne, not in a planned engagement, but in a chance, terrifying meeting. The circumstances of this encounter, the immediate danger Private Smith faced, and the overwhelming odds against him, form the backdrop of his ordinary world. This is a world defined by the immediate, visceral need to survive, a world where every shadow held potential danger and every sound was a cause for alarm. The lessons gleaned from these stark encounters are not confined to the annals of history. They offer a guide for navigating the complexities of our present. The impulse to see the other as fundamentally different, as inherently threatening, is a dangerous one, easily exploited and tragically consequential. The practice of empathy, of actively seeking to understand the perspective and shared humanity of those with whom we disagree, is not a sign of weakness, but of profound strength. It is the courage to look beyond the superficial distinctions, to acknowledge the common ground, and to recognize the universal heartbeat that connects us all, regardless of the uniforms we wear or the allegiances we profess. The true practice begins now, in our own lives, in our interactions with those around us, in our willingness to see the sun in the stranger, the shared vulnerability in the adversary. For in the quiet spaces between our own conflicts, a similar silence can offer its own profound revelation, a whisper of understanding louder than any bombastic declaration.